Welcome, it's Sean Hewitt here from the Trusted Business Community Association. I'm joined from business professionals from around the world and across the globe, predominantly going over to our friends across the Atlantic in North America, Canada and South America. But we've also been joined by some people in UK and Europe, as well as Africa, the African continent as well. We are joined today by Richard Halter. Richard Halter is the Wizard of POS. In other words, he is the Wizard of Point of Sale, and he's going to talk about point of sale and how important that part of your selling and your presence online is, and he's going to relate it to all sorts of business, not just retail. So without further ado, Richard Halter, the floor is yours, mate. Please share your screen and take it away.
Okay, can you see my messy diagram? All right, okay. I started in retail technology some 30 years ago. And when I started, one of the things we were trying to do was connect applications in retail. And I built this drawing back in about 2000. And all of these red lines are interconnections between all of the various applications in retail. We're not going to talk about that. In fact, when Sean asked me, I was like, what can I talk about that won't put everybody to sleep? And definitely this picture isn't one of them. But this picture is just as valid today as the day it was created. And all of those red lines are interconnections that I have defined standards for making them work. This is a point of sale message model. As you can see, there's a lot of information that gets shared in the retail world in the point of sale. There's somewhere around 7,000 attributes in this model. And again, I'm not going to talk about this because it'll put you to sleep as well. So what we're going to talk about is the customer journey, how we convert a shopper into a customer. Customers are the most critical component of retail. And when I say retail, let me stop for a second and give you a little definition. I've worked with the convenience store industry, the hospitality industry, the food service industry. I started in the food service industry. And I've learned that everybody who sells anything is in retail, which is kind of an interesting observation. If you're selling a battleship, that you're in retail. That battleship happens to be the item you're selling. If you're selling a hamburger, if you're selling a shirt, if you're selling a gallon of gasoline, it's all the same thing. Everybody in the world is in retail. So everybody in here is in retail, right? Whether you realize it or not. So everything that I do applies to everybody, which was an interesting observation. I've had many conversations with people like in the convenience store that would say, oh, no, we're not, we're different. And then I point out all of the similarities, and there are vast amount of similarities. Anyway, so we're going to convert a shopper into a customer. We're going to talk about the customer journey. All right. So why? Why does somebody buy? Well, the task of retail is to get a consumer into your store, have them buy something, and have them make a profit on that sale. You'd be surprised how many people miss the third step of this. In fact, I wrote a whole book on it. It's actually a 3-volume book that explains all of the details and gets you down into the geek speak, which is where my world is. So what is a customer? Well, he starts out as a population, and then in the pyramid, as you move up, you start becoming a prospect. And then eventually you become a visitor. When you start looking around and picking things up, you become a shopper. And at the top of the pyramid is the customer. People don't realize that 80 to 90% of your sales is to people who are repeat customers. A lot of people focus on, well, let's get people into the store kind of thing, but they don't focus on the customer, right? Critical component. Now, ART, the Association for Retail Technology Standard, which is the group that I was chief technical architect for, created this customer lifecycle model, which is basically shows you what you were just looking at in the pyramid, where you start off with the population, you move through people to become prospects, they walk around and land on your page, they become a visitor, eventually they become a shopper, and finally you sell them something and they become a consumer. I mean, a customer. The that is a critical component. The selling of something makes them a customer. A lot of people think about somebody that just comes in the front door as a customer, but they're really somebody who sells something. Then you have influencers who help move you along that path. And this is really important in today's web world. There's a lot of influencers out there who can help make your product sell. And then you've got to have what initiatives you create as a retailer to move and help move people along this path. And so this becomes the customer life cycle. So how do you interact with your customer? You can see there's a lot of different pieces of that involve your retail strategy, starting with what products you sell. What is the price for those products? How do you promote them? What channel do you use? It used to be back when the internet started that the brick and mortar retailers thought the internet was this flash in the pan thing that was going to go away, and they made the internet side build their whole infrastructure up, which was identical to the infrastructure the brick and mortar folks put together. And then eventually it became omni-channel, which is buy online, pick up in the store model. And they all of a sudden realized that they had to integrate those two systems together so that when they called something a blue shirt on the internet, it was the same blue shirt that they were selling in the store. Then you want to create the retail experience. And that's a challenging one because you've got two different experiences you create. One is the online one, and there are a lot of horrible online experiences out there. And the other side, the other experience is in the store. Um, we went into a store the other day and they totally rearranged the store. So now you have to find new places for the stuff you're looking for. Huge mistake because the customers are all upset over this new organization. So you got to be careful with the retail experience. And then you get into social networking, and that's becoming very, very important in terms of selling. One of the interesting observations is people will go into like a clothing store and try on an outfit, take a picture of it, and post it out in the social world to get the social opinion on whether it was a good purchase, a good thing to buy or not. And they'd wait around in the store until they got some responses back to decide whether to buy something. So social networking has a lot of things to help people move into buying stuff. And so they have to be a critical component of your strategy. Then the supply chain. Remember during COVID, people had trouble getting things because of the supply chain problems. Supply chain is a huge problem with making sure that you get items to your customers in real time to make them happy. If you take a week to get something to somebody, they may badmouth you on their social networking because it took them too long. So the supply chain is a critical component to making your customers happy. And then post sale support. One of the big issues today is returns. A lot of companies make it almost impossible to return an item that is broken, for example. They get a huge amount of bad publicity because of a poor return policy. So when you do something, you've got to make sure you make it easy to get your customers back because repeat customers are where you make your sale. And if you make somebody upset with your return policy, you've lost them on that repeat policy side. So what, when, and where you sell is important. What items do you sell? What business unit do you use? That's your stores. Where's your geographic location? That's an interesting one because if you're like a Walmart, they have they sell stuff in like a Mexican area. And so they want to sell Mexican food and Mexican products to that geographic location. And right next to it, they could have an Asian one where they want to sell things like rice and that kind of stuff. And so they've got to be able to tailor their business to their particular customer location. Again, the channels. Are you selling online or are you selling in the store? Time is also important. One interesting observation that I had was Walmart found out that when at 5 o'clock in the evening, the men would come in and go buy diapers. And at the same time, they would buy beer. And so they figured out that if they put the diapers and the beer together, they would sell a lot more of both items. So timing is important. And of course, the customer, this is typically was the male customer that was buying this stuff. One very important piece is how you're performing. A lot of smaller businesses in particular come up with great strategies. They come up with the execution of that, but they don't measure its success. And if that strategy isn't working, these companies fail. And this is one of the key areas where a lot of them fail. Rather than going back and reviewing their strategy and changing it, they keep the same strategy and they end up failing. And this is where most of the small retailers fail, is with not being able to monitor what they're doing. Now, let's understand our customers a little bit more. You start with the conversion. Are they aware of what you're doing? Are they aware of the selection you've got? Are you running into an attrition? You don't have enough of a particular item. Selling candy at Valentine's Day is a critical thing. You got to have it, right? And reactivation of the customers. You want to talk about the segmentation, demographic. This is the one I was talking about, the Mexican versus the Asian model. Psychographic. Psychographic is kind of important because there you're dealing with their personality and their attitudes. And then the geographic, where are they located? All belong into how you segment your particular customers. Then you get into the behavior of your customer. What is their shopping pattern? How do they buy? Do they buy like the 5 o'clock beer and diaper thing? Or do they come in at noon? There was one lady that I knew for years who would go to Macy's. She was a very rich lady. She was elderly, and she went to Macy's every day. She knew where every item in Macy's was. And if you needed something, she knew more than the store employees did. So what are the next thing is their tendencies. What are the tendencies to buy whatever they do? And of course, the likes and dislikes. If you've got something that isn't selling, you want to make sure that you get rid of that and put something else in there. So you've got to understand what your customer is doing. In how do you convert them? What is segment they're dealing with, and what is their behavior? So let's go a little bit more. The customer conversion. How do you convert them? Well, you created a conversion event. You then what's happening to cause them to buy this? What is their conversion state? Are they in a particular life cycle? If you're selling to senior people versus mom and pops, there's different customer states or conversion states. What initiatives have you done? This is your promotions area. And do you have a goal for it? You can have the best item in the world and nobody's buying it. So your goal is, you've got to figure out if your goal is correct. This is where your KPI and measuring comes into play. Your segmentation data. You start with the geographic. You're grouping your people, your customers, based on what segment they are, based on their geographics, based on their customer type, what kind of people they are. What is their demographic components? Like their gender, their marital status, the education level, and so on. Demographic is becoming really important in the United States. We're seeing a lot of different kinds of demographics really sticking out. And I'm not even going to get into the woke stuff. And then, of course, the psychographic. What are their values? What are their means? Motivation to identify. Why does a customer buy a particular item? Psychographic is really important to understand what sells in what store. And then finally, you get into the customer behavior. What did they buy? What tender did they use? That's an interesting one. My wife still uses a check. She doesn't use a credit card. She doesn't use a debit card. She prefers using a check. And everybody wonders why. Well, it's because uh, in her checkbook, it makes a copy of the check. So she now has a real-time uh, log of everything she buys. What loyalty programs do they use? Loyalty programs become really, really important for certain segments. Some people really love them and they will buy things simply because they add loyalty points and they talk about loyalty and they share loyalty points. And then what discounts apply? That's your promotions area. What what patterns do you use? Yeah. That all brings us to what I call the business execution model. The business execution model starts with your strategy. How are you going to address your particular customer segments? And that leads you to your business architecture. What value streams do you need to execute to support that particular strategy? And when you've defined how you want to do that, it gets broken down into three components. What processes are you going to use to sell that item? What part of your organization is critical to the success of that particular value stream, and the enterprise architecture, which is the data. In my particular work, there is over 20,000 attributes or pieces of information that applies, and not all of that applies to all of the various things you're trying to sell. And then, of course, the business intelligence, that's where the KPIs come in. And I have seen many, 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 I can't even tell you how many small companies fail because of the business intelligence component. If you don't monitor what you're doing and how successful it is, you will fail. And it has happened over and over again. Uh, I've seen companies who come up with brilliant strategies. They put them in this really fancy notebook and they put them on the shelf and then they go back to doing what they were doing just before. They end up failing as well. You've got to take a strategy and you've got to use it to guide and drive your business. And you've got to measure the success of that strategy and change in real time. And particularly with AI today, with AI, real time is real time. Okay. So in a nutshell, that's that's it. So any questions from anybody? Did I put you to sleep?
I think we're all still awake. Thanks so much for that, Richard. Real insight there. Do you want to stop sharing your screen so I can have a look at everybody on the call, see if there's anyone who wants to put their hand up? One thing I struck me was when you was talking about how technology has moved forward, and I remember 2000, around 2000 it was, Blockbuster Video when in was asked if they wanted to buy Netflix, and they decided not to for $50 million. Probably one of the biggest mistakes Blockbuster ever did. Because obviously Blockbuster are no more, but Netflix have gone beyond the worth that they were ready to sell. And I suppose that's all about positioning as well yourself in business as well, to make sure that you've got something that somebody else really wants. And of course Netflix is what everybody wants nowadays, but it's about keeping up with the demands, I suppose, of your consumer. And obviously, Blockbuster thought we'll always be around. There'll always be a need for somebody on the high street, and there wasn't, because it's now very accessible from your home without even having to go down the shop to get a video or a DVD or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and a couple of recent ones of those was the Budweiser failure with their ad, not understanding your customer. Your customers are king. If you don't understand your customer, you will fail.
Mm.
Budweiser still hasn't recovered from that.
Right.
Uh, and so there's numerous examples of that. If you look at something called Kmart, Kmart thought Walmart was a flash in the pan, and they didn't pay attention to the people in the outlying areas that Walmart serviced. And today Walmart's number one, right?
And I
And
suppose
Kmart's gone.
what that does is I suppose it shows how important it is to understand your customer and understand your clients, because without that understanding of what they need, how things are moving forward, if you don't keep up with it, somebody else will take that customer and client away from you.
That's right. That's right. There's a company called Olo that I helped build the point of sale, right?
Mm.
Back in 2010. They were a small company. Today, they're $1 billion company, and they just got bought by somebody, and they're now on the stock exchange. I like to claim that it's all my fault that they're $1 billion company.
Brilliant.
That's the
As
only claim I got. I didn't get any
well,
money out of
mate,
it.
you great. You grab that claim. Anybody got any questions or observations or thoughts of what Richard was talking about? Obviously, there was a lot to take in, lots of different ways of looking at how our client's journey or a customer's journey is very, is paramount to how we deliver it for them. Anybody got any questions that they would like to ask Richard whilst he's here? No?
Well, he's doing that. Everybody on
I'm,
this call needs to understand that customer model.
Yeah.
I was kind of worried that there's certain men buying beer and diapers at the same time. Did anybody else put two and two together and come up with something not very pleasant, or was that just me?
That was just you. Yeah,
That's
I
just
think
me.
that was
Okay,
just you.
thanks.
Yeah, yeah. No, that was all right.
Okay,
Yeah,
It was all right. But diapers, yeah, I can see perhaps where you were coming from.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Diapers and beer together. Yes.
yeah.
But
Now there was another company that actually took and separated the two because they wanted impulse buying when they bought the diapers, and they walk over to get the beer, and hopefully they'd sell something else in between. So there's two different views of that logic.
yeah, 100%. I remember
It's
being in
interesting that though. Really interesting. All joking apart, it's really interesting that people look at sort of those connections and then think, right, let put the two things side by side on the shelves. I like that.
Yeah. I mean,
it's
even if
called
you're
link
if you're
selling, isn't
like
it?
making dolls,
Hmm.
right? And you're selling dolls, why do people buy them? And what related things that you can sell with a doll, like clothing, for example. Sometimes people don't think about all of how to expand their product mix.
You wouldn't. I mean, I worked in retail for many years, Richard, and in the clothing industry. I worked for Next Retail Limited, and it's you think about the journey of right the way from each carcass and how it's set up. I mean, we used to be given photographs of how to put what items in each carcass so that they all had a blend with each other. But then the obvious one is you wouldn't have formal shirts on one side away from the suits, would you, or the ties? You'd have them all
Yeah.
together along with the shoes, because obviously one of the key things, and we used to do this all the time in Next. Somebody come in wanting a suit, but they didn't put a shirt on. They didn't have a shirt. They had a t-shirt, and of course a suit jacket over a t-shirt, especially if it's not plain or something like that. If it's a white or black plain t-shirt, it doesn't look too bad. But if it's a patterned t-shirt, it's not going to look very nice. So we always used to have some shirts, different types of shirts in different sizes, as just testers, so people could just put them on and put the jacket over the top, and then we'd go, oh, try this tie with it, and then you're putting there, put the tie, and all of a sudden you're dressing them to the point of going, I like that shirt, I like that tie, oh, I like those pair of socks, and that suit looks lovely. And before you knew it, you'd sold them not just the suit, you'd sold them a shirt, a tie, a pair of socks, a pair of shoes. Before you kit them out,
Exactly.
and
Yep.
that's the journey of it's what we I don't know if it's still called that nowadays. It's a long time since I've been in retail, but it was called link selling. And it was
Hmm.
about linking each item. So you take the customer on a journey. And the suit sales were brilliant, because you'd always get double, you'd always end up with an extra pair of trousers being sold, because you'd tell them about the fact that the wear on the inside leg. If they'd come in and say, I want a whole all wool suit, and they'd say, you'd ask them why. And they'd sit there and go, well, I want wool's the best quality. But if they're going to be wearing it every day, and they're going up and down the train into London and back out again, the wall quality is not the best because it wears too quickly. So you need a blend of a mix with a a wool blend mix just to maintain the shape of the suit. So you'd educate people as part of the journey, and people would come back time and time and time again because once they knew that they'd had a good experience themselves, they wouldn't go anywhere else.
Yep. Yep.
And that's the
And
biggest.
if you ever alienate them, they're gone.
Yeah. Do you know what I'm like you, Richard, consultant as well. I do quite a bit of consultancy, and one of the key things that I do when I'm helping a business rebuild or regrow their position in the marketplace, is to look at what systems they've got in place to keep in touch with their existing clients. Far too many small businesses are looking at the horizon, at the big picture over there, that golden ticket over in the distance. But the only way to get to the golden ticket is to look after the here and now and those that have been around you. And if you've given them a great experience and you keep in touch with these potential existing clients that can be potential new sales, then you've got more of a chance of getting to that golden ticket that you see way over there in the distance.
That's why when I first ran into that repeat customer number being so high as a critical component, I never realized that was where almost all your sale goes.
Yeah.
Right. So it does. That's a great point.
Every time when I was PAYE with other companies, even in the different industry sectors, I jumped out of the retail, got into property sales and estate agency, or real estate as you guys call it over there. And it was the same. I found myself being, I suppose, used as the guy to go in to sort out the problem branches or the problem offices, because I could see that the majority of the things that were going wrong were the things that were right underneath their noses, the things that they'd forgotten about. Those existing clients, those past clients. You look after them, and they will come back time and time and time again, and they build a future of success just by being proactive with those that have used you. And why would you not? This is the thing. I mean, this is what I don't. I suppose I educate. I don't understand why people can't see it initially, but I do educate, and then they can see what they need to do. But the why would you not look after those that have been through your door once or twice, and they become many more and more repeat customers? Why would you not? Because at the end of the day, if they've already bought from you, they already like you. If they've come back once, they'll come back twice, three times, four times. And if you can continue to give that ultimate service level of standard, which is what I've built here with the association, creating the opportunity to stand out from the crowd as accredited in your service excellence, because the consumer will buy that. They buy into that consumer experience.
Yeah. That's the KPI component that I was talking about. If you're not, and in my presentation, I had to cut down a lot to get it down into the time.
Yeah.
There's an enormous amount of information on the business strategy side. How do you reach out to various customers? On your KPI side, what KPIs are important for measuring exactly what you just described?
Yeah.
They don't measure them and they fail.
Yeah, 100%. Well, if there's no further questions, I'm going to stop the recording, and I'd like to, for everyone, just to show appreciation to Richard Halter, the Wizard of POS. Big round of applause for the Wizard of POS, all the way from Mustang in Oklahoma. Lovely to have you with us, Richard. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop the recording. So those that are listening in on our YouTube channel, where this is going to be shown, don't forget to like and subscribe below, and then follow all the other videos that are up there, including past guest speakers here at our meetings, along with those that have already been interviewed by me for the purpose, obviously, of being a member of the association. So go and listen in, have a listen to all the different professionals from around the world that have already been interviewed by us on the big interview, and look out for more coming your way over the year. I'll finish the recording.